So let's go into what is the impairment. So what are we looking at when we talk about an impairment evaluation? And there's a couple words we definitely want to be familiar with. So it says an impairment evaluation, a medical evaluation performed by a physician. Very important. An impairment evaluation may include a numerical impairment percentage. So it's an evaluation, medical evaluation by a physician that may include a percentage or a number. And that's going to be real important because essentially we're tying numbers to injuries. Well, why would we do that? Well, for the most part, it's for financial compensation. That's why. So, an impairment evaluation is not the same as an independent medical evaluation. So, and so it says the independent medical evaluation evaluates but does not provide care for the individual, and it doesn't go into permanency. So the independent medical evaluation is just a point in time. An impairment rating is permanent. That's why it's called permanent impairment. So very different scenario. So there's a big difference between a SOAP note, a narrative report, an independent medical examination, and an impairment rating. And so we definitely need to know the difference between these. So it says here, who performs an impairment evaluation? And I get this question a lot. There's a lot of confusion with who can perform an impairment evaluation. Matter of fact, I just had a chiropractor the other day I was talking to. He said, oh, you can't do impairment rating. We chiropractors can't do impairment ratings in this state. And I'm going, no, that's not correct. So he was, and I go, where'd you hear that from? He goes, oh, I heard that from a buddy. So that's how word gets out there. I'm like, no, that's not correct. So impairment evaluations are performed by a licensed physician. In other words, if you're a licensed doctor in your state, that's the requirement according to the AMA guides, period. Unless your state may restrict the type of practitioner allowed to perform an impairment evaluation, and some require additional state certification or other criteria. I only know of one state that does some modifications a little bit, but for the most part, every state, chiropractors can do permanent evaluations. If you're a licensed chiropractor, because you're a licensed doctor, okay? So it says the physician's role in performing it is to provide an independent, unbiased assessment of the individual's medical condition, including its effect on function, and identify abilities and limitations to performing activities of daily living. And so individuals have the information needed to pursue any benefits to which they are entitled. See, that's why. Why else would you why else would you put a number on an injury? Well, that's why. It's for benefits. It's for financial compensation. It's primarily in aiding with workers' compensation, but definitely with personal injury. Now, workers' compensation, we'll go into this in detail. Typically, we'll use what's called a disability rating, but you'll see there's a lot of times they'll consider the impairment when they're doing the disability rating. But we'll go into the difference because we definitely need to know the difference between a disability rating and an impairment rating because they are different, and how they're used is different, especially in personal injury. So the skills required for impairment evaluation are usually not taught during basic medical training. Right there, it says it. Right in that paragraph, it says it, are not taught during basic medical training. And you want to keep that in mind because most attorneys don't even know that. So if you're a physician, you're allowed to give it, but just because you're allowed to give it, does that mean you know how to give it? No. I could probably poll 10 chiropractors randomly, and 9.9 of them would not know how to give impairment ratings, even though they're allowed to give impairment ratings. Okay, so it says the impairment's impact on an individual's, okay, so the physician may be asked to assess the medical impairment impact on an individual's ability to work. In the latter case, physicians need to understand the essential functions of the occupation and specific job, as well as how medical conditions interact with occupational demands. And so, in many cases, a physician may need to obtain additional expertise to define functional abilities and limitations as well as vocational demands. Now, this becomes very important, and we go into detail that a vocational demand has to do with a disability, vocational meaning work, uh, defining functions, in others, activities of daily living, that's an impairment. So we'll go into greater detail into that shortly, but there are differences and you do need to be aware of them.